Yinger, and I had breakfast about a year ago at Bob Evans up here on the North End. And from that discussion resulted in his being invited to speak to our group today. He is a retired Columbus police officer who runs an organization that supports our first responders. And based on the difficult work that they do, they also especially suffer from PTSD, depression, and self-medication and substance abuse forms. Before this presentation today, Mick, I looked up a Northwestern University study that said nationally, there are about 18 per 100,000 people who are firefighters that commit suicide every year. The number for police officers is 17 per 100,000 people per year. And for everyone else, it's 13 per 100,000. So without further ado, Mick, I'm going to let you fill us in here on this important subject. And thank you for being here today.
Great. Hey, Mike, thank you for that introduction. And I can't remember who even connected us, but it was great meeting you. And I thank you for this opportunity. And it's an honor to present to you today. And I want to give a quick shout out to Scott Brown because he has been awesome to work with. Because I don't know the past presenters that you've had, but I can promise you that none of them is less technical than I am. And Scott has been fantastic to deal with. And I'm going to do a PowerPoint presentation for you today, so you don't have to sit and stare at my face on this screen. So I'm going to try to see if I can get it up here on the screen for you here, and I might need Scott's help. All right. Okay. Again, like Mike said, I retired from the Columbus Police Department. I spent the majority of my career working in covert assignments, mostly in the what's called the Strategic Response Bureau with CPD. And as most of you obviously know, on February the 10th, 2018, Westerville police officers Tony Morelli and Eric Joering were murdered when responding to a 911 hang-up call. And I had a lot of close relationships with members of the Westerville Police Department from working a lot of cases with them, especially Eric when he worked in the Detective Bureau. And I was asked to be in the funeral procession, and it was an honor for my family and I to do that. And I saw firsthand not only the pain that the families were going through, but those actual first responders that were at that scene that day, just the pain that they were going through. They were just devastated, and obviously rightfully so. And so that next day, I got together with my best friend growing up, Mike Pavolino. And Pav had just retired from the Westerville Police Department prior to this happening as a detective and a SWAT team leader. And he did 4 tours overseas as a Chief Warrant Officer 3 in the Army. And Mike and I talked about just the incredible turnout at the funeral with first responders coming from all over the country. And then we talked about how we do such a great job of taking care of the families and the departments when a first responder dies in the line of duty, like we should and will continue to do. But where we fall short is that single traumatic event that takes place, or even more so, just that cumulative stress that builds up over time in our first responders from the things that we see and hear on the job every day. Mike and I learned that, kind of like Mike was saying, that each year more police officers and firefighters commit suicide than all line of duty deaths combined. That's unacceptable. In 2019, there were 189 police officer and firefighter line of duty deaths, 189. There were 358 police officer and firefighter suicides. Again, it's unacceptable. I had a former partner and close friend that committed suicide. I had a former academy classmate that killed himself. Personally, I was forced to take someone's life out of a shooting. So I know not only what the person goes through, but I also know what the family goes through as well. Mike and I knew that we had to do something to get out in front of this. So we started a nonprofit called First Responders Bridge. And in doing so, we knew that we had to do three things. Number one, we knew that we had to include the spouses or significant others, because they walk with us every step of the way, even when we don't let them. Number two, we knew that we had to include the dispatchers and corrections officers, because they often get forgotten when you think about first responders, especially those dispatchers, because they are the first responder. They take that first call and then they don't get a conclusion to it. They go on to the next call once we arrive. So we knew that we had to include them. And then we knew that for the bridge to be successful, it couldn't be run by first responders or it would fail. We had to put real smart people around us. So we did just that. The bridge is run by first responders, clinicians, and business leaders. And if you get a chance to check out our website and look at the team we put around us, I think you'd agree. They work tirelessly to make the bridge what it is today. Our website is firstrespondersbridge.org. So what we do is we provide 3-day expense-free retreats for active and retired first responders and their significant other who are experiencing depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, or that are suicidal from the things that they see and hear on the job every day. Excuse me. They hear from peers who've been in their shoes. We want them to know that they're not alone in feeling the things that they're feeling. But then they also hear from our incredible clinicians. We want them to know, all of our clinicians have experience working with first responders. If you don't have experience working with first responders, you can't work with our people. Our stresses are just so unique. Our retreats are all high level. They're educational and informative. We do not do counseling at our retreats. We will make referrals after the retreats for them, though. I'll be honest with you, at our first retreat, we didn't know what to expect. When we put this together, if we would have had 25 people show up, we would have been ecstatic. And we ended up having 91 first responders and their significant other show up from 5 different states. And I think that just showed how much this was really needed. At the beginning of March, we have our 5th retreat coming up. We have over 90 people signed up right now from 13 different states. They're coming as far as California, Colorado, Missouri, Arizona, Massachusetts, North Carolina. They're coming from all across the country to our retreat. I mentioned our peer speakers, and the reason we do that is we want our attendees to know that they're not alone the things that they're feeling. We don't sit around police stations and fire departments and talk about our feelings. When you talk about that stigma, it's real. It's getting better, but it's real. So we bring in peer speakers to speak. And one of the peer speakers that we bring in is a gentleman by the name of Scott Geiselhart. And he is a retired assistant fire chief with the Frazee, Minnesota Fire Department. And Scott was having such horrific nightmares and flashbacks from the things that he was seeing on the job that he started taking meth to stay awake so he wouldn't have those flashbacks. And he got to the point, obviously he ended up getting addicted to meth, and he got to the point where he was doing a line of meth an hour. And he ended up losing his business that he had on the side. He lost a longtime girlfriend. His kids wouldn't talk to him. He lost everything. And he ended up going into an office that he had. He took a revolver out of his desk. He put the gun to his head and he pulled the trigger. And by the grace of God, the gun didn't go off. And he ended up getting help. He found a clinician that specialized in first responders. He did EMDR therapy. And now he speaks all across the country to groups like ours. And he's become a really good friend. And he tells a story at our retreats about how about 2 years after this took place, he was driving down the street with his son, which he's rebuilt those relationships with his kids. And his son's, or he told his son, he said, I am so glad that gun didn't go off. And he says his son said, Dad, the gun did go off. It killed bad dad. And it's really emotional when the kid or when our attendees hear from our peer speakers, because they do know that they're not alone in this. But then they also hear from our incredible clinicians. We want to give them the clinical aspect of why they're feeling like they're feeling. We give them tools to go home with to continue that healing process. So one of our clinicians is Lisa Callender. She's the director of the Employee Assistance Program with the City of Columbus. She's been working with first responders for over 30 years. And she is a rock for me. She's a board member of First Responders Bridge, and I have no clinical experience whatsoever. So I lean on her so much about what we should do on that aspect of what we're doing with our retreats, and she is just fantastic. So then we bring in a lady by the name of Allison Uribe. She is the spouse of a San Antonio, Texas police officer. And she gives great perspective to what our spouses go through. Her and her husband started a ministry called Wives on Duty. And she's a chaplain with Billy Graham Law Enforcement Retreats. And like I said, she's writing her third book now to first responder spouses, and just gives great perspective to what they go through. And she's probably one of our most popular speakers. And we actually have people call us or contact us and want to come just to listen to her. And we kind of had to put a kibosh on that because, we need to keep our retreats just to our attendees. But she's a really, really popular speaker. So our attendees fill out very detailed evaluation forms at the end of our retreats. And what we found out after our first retreat is that we give them a lot of heavy information for over those 3 days. And there's a lot of tears shed. It's a lot of serious, heavy stuff. And we needed to do something to break it up and to lighten the mood a little bit. So I did some research, and I found this gentleman by the name of Vinnie Montez. He is a commander with the Boulder, Colorado Sheriff's Department. And he was dealing with some mental health issues of his own, so he got into comedy. And now he does comedy shows all across the country. And it's all first responder comedy. And if you get a chance to YouTube him, his name's Vinnie Montez. He is hilarious. But like I said, he comes out and does shows for us. But just a quick story. After the first show that we brought him in, a lady came up to me after the show and says, I just want to thank you for bringing Vinnie in. She goes, my husband hasn't laughed in years, and he just laughed the entire time. And I went up to the hotel room that night, and I told my wife, I said, that's really sad. I go, you got a first responder that goes out and puts his life on the line every day for our community. And then he goes home and he hasn't laughed in years. I mean, that's got to affect the family too. And so we bring in on Saturday night when we bring Vinnie in, we bring in Cracker Jacks and popcorn and soft pretzels and soft drinks and water. And it's a real comedy show, and it has been a huge addition to what we do. So, like I said, our retreats are completely free of cost. Finances could be their trigger. And so we pay for everything except their travel to and from the Marriott Northwest Hotel in Dublin. We pay for their food. We pay for their lodging. We pay for the speakers that come from across the country. And we have incredible sponsors that help forward our mission. Just some of our sponsors, just to name a few, are American Electric Power, Mount Carmel Health, Kokosin Construction, Bryant Heating and Cooling, RKE Trucking, and CME Federal Credit Union. Each retreat costs us approximately $60,000, and we do 3 retreats per year. Obviously this has been a very tough year on all of our first responders with COVID and everything else going on in the world. And I can't tell you how many calls and texts and emails I've received from our sponsors this year, just wanting, hey, how are our first responders doing? Do they need anything? So, our sponsors truly care. They don't just write a check and just wait till next year. they truly care about our first responders, and we are always looking to add more sponsors to our mission. So, but we are so appreciative of all of our sponsors. Like I mentioned before, our clinicians put together these very detailed evaluation forms that our clinicians put together, and then we send them out to an independent group to be evaluated. You know, it wouldn't be fair if we graded those out ourselves. So one of our clinicians takes care of that. And right now we're sitting at a 98.7% of our attendees have rated the bridge retreat either a 4 or 5 stars out of 5, and with most of those being 5 stars. And the only thing that's scoring higher on our evaluation forms is the food and the lodging at the Marriott Northwest Hotel, and they've been absolutely fantastic to deal with, and they're sitting over at 99% right now. So we're really happy with where things are right now. And then after our retreat, every 30, 60, and 120 days after the retreat, they receive a follow-up survey. We want to know how they're doing once they've gotten home. We want to know what barriers they're facing, because those runs don't stop. They're still responding to those shootings, those suicide scenes. They're still responding to the fires and the car crashes, and they're still dispatching those scenes. So we want to know what, you know, barriers that they're facing since they've returned home. And then we have a 1-day follow-up retreat once a year where we bring back the attendees of our past retreats and we attack those barriers. And so we're really excited with where we are with that as well. We weren't able to do it this year due to COVID, but we'll be doing that again next year. So these are just some stats I just wanted to share with you. I'm not going to read them because they say not to read to read the screens, whatever. But this is just something I wanted to share with you, that we had a police chief at the one of our retreats from the Cincinnati area spoke at one of our retreats, and he shared these with us. And I thought they were so eye-opening, from the American Heart Association. And the bottom one's the one that shocked me the most. The average life expectancy for a civilian is 79 years old. The average life expectancy for a law enforcement officer is 57 years old. That just, I mean, that was just shocking to me. So, but then when I think back at a lot of my friends that have passed, it's not as shocking. But I just want to give you a second to look that over. But just a couple just quick stories for you here, if I could. After our first retreat, we had people were filing out of the ballroom at the Marriott, and I was talking to our board chair, Hugh Cathy. And this lady comes up to us, and she has tears pouring down her face, and this big firefighter husband next to her. And so we took him off to the side. And she said, I just want you to know that you saved our marriage. She goes, in the hotel room this morning, I told my husband that prior to the retreat, I told him I was planning on leaving him. And now I'm not only going to work on myself, but I'm going to work on our marriage as well. And they went on to tell us that they have a 13-year-old son that's attempted suicide 3 times. And each time that he's blamed their marriage and on his suicide attempts. And they're doing fantastic now. They're all over our Facebook page, on the Bridge page, and they stay in contact with us, and they've made a bunch of different referrals to people to attend our retreat since. So we're really happy about that. And I'm kind of going to be vague on this one just because of confidentiality reasons. But on this story, we had a local first responder that attended our retreat, one of our retreats, and he contacted us after the retreat, and he wanted to do some volunteer with us. And he stopped by my house. He was either dropping something off or picking something up since he attended the retreat. And he was sitting in my living room talking to my wife and I, and he said, I just want you to know that prior to the retreat, I was not only suicidal, that I actually had a plan in place. And the retreat saved my life. And that just, I mean, we were all in tears, and it just, sometimes we get frustrated with where we are. You know, we think we should be further and we should have more sponsors or this and that. But then it just kind of puts into perspective that, you know, why we're doing what we're doing, and we are making an impact. And it was very emotional. So I just wanted to share that with you. So you know, we like to say we are producing healthier first responders and healthier marriages, and our ultimate goal is to reduce that suicide rate among our first responders. You know, we have had some suicide within the police and fire community here locally in the last year or so, and the way things are going right now, I'm really concerned about our first responders here locally right now. So I want to just take a minute here. Mike asked me to do this, and I want to first of all clarify, I'm not a clinician. This is just stuff that I've learned working with our clinicians and doing some research. But he asked me, just with everything going on with COVID right now and everything going on in the world, that there's a lot of people dealing with depression and anxiety and maybe losing a loved one due to COVID right now, that just kind of some signs you can keep an eye out for, some warning signs of someone that might be suicidal, maybe a friend or loved one or coworker that you can keep an eye out for. So if you see someone maybe talking about suicide, that maybe making comments to the effect of, I'd be better off dead, or I wish I hadn't been alive, or if someone has a preoccupation with death, maybe unusual focus on death that they didn't have before, if they have like self-loathing or self-hatred, everyone would be better off without me type of comments, or self-destructive behavior, an increase of drug use or alcohol use that they didn't have, or acting recklessly. We had a group of police officers that do motorcycle rides, and we had one that was just acting really reckless all of a sudden and was drinking a lot. And come to find out that they were able to get him some help, and he was in a bad way. And so if you just notice these signs, it's just something to keep an eye out for. But and if our clinicians talk about this a lot, if you're concerned about someone, asking them if they're suicidal will not make them suicidal. If they're showing these signs, it's okay to ask them. It's not going to make them suicidal. I had a situation recently where a friend was exhibiting some signs that made me concerned, and I had to have that difficult conversation with them. And it was difficult. It was uncomfortable, but I had to do it. And so these are just some suggestions on how to start that conversation. And I did. I just, hey, I'm concerned about you. I can tell, you're not acting the same. And it come to find out he wasn't suicidal, but he had gotten separated from his wife, and they're living separately now, and he was just holding a lot in. But it was uncomfortable, but I had to have that conversation. So sometimes we have to do that if we're concerned about our friends. But if you have that conversation, and you know what, I'm in a bad way right now, evaluate that immediate danger. Do they have a specific plan or means to carry it out, or an intention to harm themselves? Then make sure there's no weapons in place, and by all means, don't leave them alone. And then get them help. Call a crisis hotline number. Contact a mental health facility for them or with them. And then if they refuse to do so, and if they're an immediate harm to themselves, call 911, and law enforcement will take them to a facility, and they're going to be mad at you, but you know what, you want to get them that help. So these are just some suggestions. And like I said, I'm not a clinician, and there's probably some better advice out there, but I just wanted to, Mike asked if I would share that with you. So here's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. It's a great resource. It's manned 24/7, 365 days a year. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I just want to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share with you today. And hope I didn't go too quick. If there's any questions that I can answer for you, I'd love to do that for you.
Yeah, Mick, it looks like we've got maybe a couple. I know I saw Tricia, I think maybe has a question for Mick.
Mick, thank you. That was a wonderful presentation, and I salute you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
I just have a couple questions. One is Westerville as a community, the way that they responded to the death of those two officers was unlike anything I really had witnessed before. And in the fall of 2018, I had the opportunity to work with the city of Westerville on a nomination and an application that they were doing to be named one of the top 7 intelligent communities. And under one of the areas, which is community engagement, I wrote the case study of how they came together over that, over those deaths. And we all probably in this group write, and you write, and you write, and you write, and you reread it, and you edit it, and you rewrite it. And I swear to you, the whole time I was writing that, and every time I read it, I mean, to this day, every time I read that section of the nomination, I cry because it was such a touching and senseless death, but the way the community came together was so amazing. And I have to believe that Westerville as a community had something to do with that. But I hope that the families of Eric and Anthony take some measure of comfort that something like your organization, something like the community coming together. I know Westerville started what they call a 10th of the month club, where the 10th of every month, because that was the day that they were shot, February 10th, the 10th of every month, they come together and they do random acts of kindness. So my first question is, what do you think that the community of Westerville had anything to do with that? But secondly, my next question is one of, what does your organization need most? Do you need more capacity? Do you need more fundraising? What do you need to do to expand your mission? Sorry
Yeah.
for the long.
No, and I
conversation,
think to go to what you were saying first, I think everything came together, and you can't plan for something like this. They did, especially not only just one officer, but two. And then, so I think it came back to leadership, the leadership from the department, from their mayor's office, the city manager. I mean, the leadership was phenomenal. The whole city came together. Other departments around Central Ohio police departments came together and were taking runs while the officers grieved, so the officers wouldn't have to go out and try to take runs during that time. They came together. I know Billy Graham Law Enforcement, or Billy Graham Crisis Response Team, brought trucks there to help. It's just, Folds of Honor, the names escape me, came together for that family and paid off the houses or whatever it's just amazing how everyone came together, and it's just incredible. So I think the leadership from the whole city was incredible. Our organization, and this is, okay, I'll make sure this doesn't sound braggadocious, because it's not. We have hardly done any marketing for this retreat. We had a retreat scheduled for January, and we had to cancel it due to COVID. We put one flyer out on our Facebook page prior to that retreat. After we had to reschedule it, we put one flyer out with the new date. That's all the marketing we've done for our retreat. We have people coming from all over the country. People are finding out what we're doing, and it's mostly word of mouth. There's a couple EAP programs. St. Louis, Missouri Police Department somehow found out in their EAP programs, telling people. Somewhere in North Carolina, they're telling people. So the word is our services, but the financial end of it, and it's so uncomfortable. Me being I'm a cop. This is just something that we had in our hearts to do. So at first it was really hard for me to go out, and now I'm just kind of getting real with you, because now the presentation's done. At first it was really hard for me to go out and ask people for money, but that's what we did to get these sponsors. Like, who do you know? And then, but I can't tell you how many calls in the middle of the night that I've received where people were suicidal, these officers. Some of them I knew, some of them I don't. We have a process in place, so I don't have to take these calls now because I'm not trained. But to the point now, I'll ask anyone, because we got to get these people help. It's terrible. My wife told me a story. She's on this, it's a wives group, and somewhere in Ohio, and I don't know where, and I probably wouldn't say it if I did, just for confidentiality. A lady told a story about how her husband's a police officer. She was a clinician, and she could tell something was going on. And she made a comment, told me, I know something's going on. Are you okay? And then, yeah, I would never hurt myself. And, I would never do that. But yeah, I'm going through stuff. An hour later, he committed suicide. We've got to continue to forward our mission. And so, but yeah, it's we do have a one grant. We have our sponsors, but we are always pushing for that next retreat financially. So we are always looking for more sponsors to do that. But yeah.
So Mick,
Thank you.
another question. Thanks, Tricia, for the questions. Mick, there was another question about, is your organization set up as a 501c3?
Yes, we are the Bridge Corp. We are a 501c3. We have been for, what, 2.5 years, something like that. Yes.
Okay. So I see Tom Carlisi has his hand raised. Tom?
Thank you. Mickey, first of all, just to salute what you're doing and helping to save lives.
Thank you.
And I think of our Rotary motto, service above self. You're doing it, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I just want to give a recognition also. I want to let you know the Westerville Sunrise Rotary Club responded as one of the groups in Westerville. And they had formed a Peace Builder Club, and this project of responding with empathy to the officers and the families and the community was the first project they did, because the police chief was a Rotarian in that club, still is. Okay, so phenomenal. And I want to let you know also, I was hosting an online series on peace building, and we actually had the Rotarian from Westerville Sunrise talk about this. And Tricia, you were sharing, we had people in tears. One woman from Zanesville saying she'd reading this in the paper, it was just like she was in the neighborhood. We had a fellow from Canada talking about how he could relate so much because they have the constables up there with the same issues. So it's global. And I just want to recognize Rotary also as a great partner, because I salute you what you're doing. Okay.
Thank you. And one thing I should have mentioned more is we have we have surviving spouses that come as well. We've had several surviving spouses that attend our retreats as well.
So it looks like Millie wanted to make a comment.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, have you noticed that there is more pressure on the police since that no police, at those agitators that are vowing that we don't need any police in our community? Because the reason I ask that is because when I was going into the hospital one day as a patient, the uniformed police officer that was standing there was just a little rude. And I said to him, I want you to know above everything else that I greatly admire police and I thank you for your service. And then his whole attitude changed around. And he's like, yeah, it sucks the way people are talking about us. So what has that got to do with suicides? Has that made all that worse?
I talked to a high-ranking person on a local police department, and he is extremely worried we're going to have a suicide here real soon with everything. And it's not I'll be really honest, and we get along with the public a lot better than what people think. We have a lot better relationship than what the media will portray and what a lot of politicians will portray. We get along with the people in the communities a lot better than what most people think. I think it's the internal stuff that our officers are really stressed about.
Thanks. So Amanda has a question for you. Is that Amanda Bowen? She typed in her question, said, how is your bridge, your association different from the Ohio Assistance Program that the Department of Public Safety offers?
Yeah, Steve Click's a good friend of mine. When we were first putting our program together, we were kind of looking on how we were going to do it. And then I heard about the Ohio Assist program. So we sat down with Steve, and at the time he was running Ohio Assist. And we made sure that we wanted to be more of a high level, and then they get kind of more into the healing type stuff. So Steve has spoke at each of our retreats, and he talks about their program. So we work very closely together. I'm on a committee with Steve, and we work very closely together. And we make a lot of referrals to his program because, like I said, ours is very high level, educational, informative. We break that stigma, and then we make a lot of referrals to the Ohio Assist program. Great program.
Right. Looks like George Kuhn had a question. Where do you host your retreats, and how can we pass the word along?
Our retreats are all held at the Marriott Northwest Hotel in Dublin. and they treat us like gold. And we get, and even within our own organization, questions of why, since we're getting so much people coming from all over the country, would we want to move? And my answer is always no, and I'll tell you why, is because our sponsors are here. Just because, and we do have people coming from, was it 13 states or whatever, but the majority of our people are from Ohio, and we want that sponsorship money to stay right here in Columbus, where we're helping the majority of our people in Central Ohio and Ohio. So that's that's why we'll always stay right here.
Very good. All right. Well, I really, Mick, I want to thank you for taking the time to share your story, your mission, and we wish you the continued success. And if Rotary can help in any way, please let us know. Thanks, Mike Rankin, for inviting Mick and for sharing your story today. So appreciate it.
Thank you. You have my email address. If anybody has a question, go ahead and shoot me an email, and I'd love to answer it.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you, Mick.
Thank you, guys.
Great job. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Make sure you share our Zoom invites with friends and family, and encourage them to join us on Mondays at noon. Our next meeting will feature former Columbus Rotarian John Schuster speaking about civil discourse in a polarized environment. So I look forward to hearing that. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next week. We are adjourned.